It has been a hot minute since I last did a video where I analyzed Schmidt's Dionysiacs. Well, today I'm going to rectify that, and hopefully we can finish off our Dionysiacs series. Fair bit of warning, I recorded this entire video last night only to find out after an hour-long video and then trying to go and edit the video that the file was corrupt. So I've already done this once, and I'm going to do it again, and I don't really want to do it a third time, but if I have to, I will. In the last video, which is all the way back in May, we left off at Rehearsal 22, and that's where we're going to start. Now, again, I apologize for not keeping up with this. Depression is a bitch. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That's really kind of my excuse there. So, if you do not have a copy of the score, go to IMSLP and you can download one. I have a print one here in hand, and then I've got the one that I'll be using on the screen. I just put the print one down because I'll be looking at the screen the whole time. I've also figured out this nifty way to put me up in the upper whatever hand corner. So it's up your upper left hand. Hi, I'm over here. I hope that will not get too much in the way. Just know that anything you see, the top line is piccolos, the second line is flutes, third line is oboes, fourth line is English horn, and I think everything else should be visible. So let's go ahead and jump right in at Rehearsal 22. And we really, first thing we need to look at here is we want to look at our melodic. And the most prominent instrument we have here is in solo B-flat clarinet, way up in its altissimo register, up to this wonderful high F, which is about as high as Schmidt takes it. There's a couple G's throughout the piece, but this is really kind of pushing the limit of where he takes his clarinet. Oh, I made that extra bitter tonight. Let me go ahead and sing this. Ba-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-dee-dum, be-dum, be-da-dee-da-da-da-da-dee-da-da-dee-da-dum. So let's look at how he colors that melody. So for the first four bars, the solo clarinet is the primary voice. To that, it gets colored with bassoon 2 octaves lower, solo bassoon, and then tenor saxophone. And the tenor saxophone is going to be playing in the same octave as the bassoon. But oddly, take a look at what he's doing with the tenor sax. It's coming in half a beat later. So we've got the clarinet really coming in a little bit early with the grace note. Ba-dum, the bassoon going dum, and the tenor sax going bum. Very, very unusual scoring here. The melody... hands off then to the alto sax. But the alto sax, let's see, do we have an octave displacement? Yes, so the alto sax has this octave displacement, so it's going to take the tenor sax up an octave from where it was. To put this now only 1 octave lower than the B-flat clarinet. But in that same point when the alto sax comes in to take over from the tenor sax, we've got the flutes coming in on Duet, so the whole flute section in its low register. This is just going to be this hint of color that you're really not going to be able to hear very much. Underneath that, we have some sustains. We've got this low-held concert D in the bari sax, which is handed off to a G in the sarrusophone. And I believe if we go down here, yes, well, almost the same notes are... Is that a G or a G sharp? It's a G sharp in the sarrusophone. That makes more sense, because if we go down here to the euphoniums, we have the same thing, just up an octave. and then the tubas come in. But I also want to look here at what the clarinet section is doing. Remember, clarinets 1 and 2, there's 12 players each. He's now divisied those into 3 parts. So 4, 4, 4, and then 4, 4, 4. We have our clarinet section here now divided into 6 parts. Ba-da-da-da-dum. Da-da-da-dee-dum. This is really, really colorful writing, and one of the benefits of using such a large ensemble. A wind ensemble could not pull this kind of section off. And notice it is only the clarinets doing this. And only the B-flat clarinets are getting no help from the E-flats, the bass, or the contrabass. Now, is there anything else really important going on? Cornets have this counterline, or I should say just cornet 1, and it's a rising, almost chromatic figure, but not quite, D, D sharp, E, F natural, against what is essentially a descending line. This will just cut through very clearly, and it's going to be much more gentle in the cornet than if the trumpet did it. We also have these punch chords here in the horns, and anything going on here in the rest of the sax horns. We do have another counter line here in the baritone horn 1. So let's continue on. So we've really looked just at the 4 bars here. Let's look at the next 2. The flutes continue on the melody. The solo clarinet has stopped. We also have a bit of a counter melody here again in tenor sax 1. And our whole note has gone from bari saxes to sarrusophone, now to bass sax. And of course, bass sax note is cued in bari sax if you don't have a bass sax. But why would you perform this piece if you don't have a bass sax, right? And the timpani has this nice sustaining roll that is really just going to support the harmony. And down here, the horn notes have been transferred from the horns now to the baritones. The alto horns now come in ba, bum, bum, the upbeat, very, very typical of a standard alto horn part. And again, those same chords that went horns to baritones are now in bassoons. And I want you to take very close attention right here where the mouse is to the English horn and to the flute. What looks innocuous on this page becomes very important on the next page. Were I to re-engrave this measure right here, the final measure, would really need to go on to the next page because this is such an important thing where it comes in and it does not look important on this page. What does look important though is this bass clarinet solo. Bum, ba-da-da-da-dum. And we'll have to see where that goes. Anything down here? No, we just got some pizzicato in the double basses. And the bass clarinet just basically goes to one more note. But what's really important is what I was saying that looks innocuous on the page before is the piccolo and English horn duet that we have in octaves. Very unusual texture. So let's go back real quick and look at where it comes in. Bum, bum, ba-da-da-da-dee-da-da-da-dee-dum. Very, very important line, and one that if you weren't expecting it, you will miss it. Let's see, anybody else? And the alto horns just continue. Ba, ba, ba. Let's continue looking on down here at 23, down at the flugelhorns. And that's here and here. Bum, ba-da-dee-da-da-dum, ba-da-dee-da-da-dum. So handing off between flugelhorn 1 and flugelhorn 2, or actually in this case flugelhorn A, flugelhorn B. And we do have here in solo clarinet, bassoon, and oboe a counter to that. So flugelhorn, bum, ba-da-dee-da-dum, clarinet, bum, ba-da-dee-da-dum, flugelhorn again, dum, ba-da-dee-da-dum. So a nice handing off between the timbres with the flugelhorns just kind of supporting that. Underneath that, let's take a look at the clarinets. We have brum, in 3-part harmony in the first clarinet, always on beat 2. Brum, brum, brum. Oh, this one comes in just a hair early. We also have what almost looks like a jazz rhythm here in the saxophone section. 1 alto, 2 tenor, 1 baritone. A little bit of an unusual quartet here. And why I say it looks like a jazz rhythm, it's that upbeat tied into the downbeat. I see this more often in my jazz band music than I do in my concert band music. And where we had just the bum, ba-da-dee-da-da, bum, ba-da-dee-da-da, bum, ba-da-dee-da-dum, we now are increasing by the 3rd time the rhythmic temporal shifting, basically, of that canonic melody. Bum, ba-da-dee-da-da, bum, ba-da-dee-da-da-dum, ba-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum, where we are now bringing it into the trumpets, into the cornets, the bass clarinets, and pretty much all the woodwinds at this point. We're just building on that. So start off with just the 1 flugelhorn, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, because the flugelhorns are now going to come back with the bass clarinet and the flute, and then pretty much all the winds, and then right here to this last measure, and we've got boom chucks. Brum, 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 between sarrusophone and bassoon, contrabass clarinet and bass clarinet, and anything down here, between tuba and double bass, and then euphonium, baritone, and flugelhorns playing the chucks. Boom chuck, boom chuck, boom chuck. Notice that the brass do not have the grace note, while the woodwind instruments, bassoon, sarrusophone, and low clarinets do. But of more importance is this saxophone line that starts here in the baritone sax. Bum, ba-da-ding, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. This will become a really important transitional material and really helps us bridge certain sections. So let's see where he goes with that. So on to our next page. And so we had bari sax hand off to tenor sax, hand off to alto sax, and now we've got it in 2nd clarinet and 1st clarinet, and then solo and E-flat clarinet with all the upper woodwinds, and those are all leading into this trill. And our boom chucks continue. We have a little bit flourish here in the tenor sax, and our sax horns continue the boom chucks, boom chucks. And during this trill, the booms go away. And then we have just the chucks. In high bassoon, notice the tenor clef here. That's a high B flat. Bass clarinet. Notice he has switched the bass clarinet notation-wise from bass clef to treble clef. Tenor sax. But really the important line here is the horns. And essentially our low reeds, the bassoon, bass clarinet, and tenor sax are just ta 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 ta, except with the added grace ta ta ba 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 ba. Really, I mean, just this great layer cake of textures he's doing, and then the first trombone just adds in when the horn gets right into a little bit of a weak register, but not really. Anything going on really in the sax horns? Yes, the alto horns have the same thing that the horns do. So this is a very interesting use of horns plus alto horns. And then we have our flugelhorns here holding out they are acting here as the woodwinds, except the flugelhorns are not trilling. And helping out with the low woodwinds is strangely the xylophone, about the antithesis of a low woodwind sound. But the xylophone is really, really cool little xylophone part. Chances are, I would bet that some players would even take this up an octave just to cut through a little bit more, because it's not going to cut through very well in that register, but it'll work. And then we've got just this flourish up, and we're backing down now. So notice how we had the and so we basically have that in reverse. Interestingly, everything here has been temporally shifted a beat. So whereas, take a look at this rhythm here in the saxophones. That was on beat 2 before. Now it's on beat 3. So we're now, really it feels like we're 2 beats early instead of 1 beat late. And so we've temporally shifted everything. So we've had basically a section where we've had a hemiola. So right here, the second measure, we can think of this as 2, 2, 2. So these 2 bars would become 3, and these 2 bars would become 3 as well. So we really have this strange hemiola. It's written in 3, but it feels like it's in 2. Pop, 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 pop. And then we've got the flugelhorn coming back. Dee-ba-da-dee-da-dum. And what took about 4 measures earlier is now really only taking 2. So he's just shifted everything, made it more compact. And he does the same thing here. And so at 24, we've got the boom chucks again. But we've got the boom chucks with the sax, and everything is shorter. So we've got the trill coming in here. It's now a beat earlier than it was. Whereas we had the horns going bup, 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 bup. Now it's in the trumpets and cornets, with the cornets going brap, 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 brap. But this is going to be much more powerful because the trumpet is, of course, a more powerful instrument. We getting help down here in the sax horns? No, we're not. We just have this held note here in the flugels. Held chord, really. The xylophone is doing its thing. This whole thing is at a higher pitch level. It's scored higher. It's scored stronger. And yeah, take a look here at this flute part. I don't even want to count ledger lines, but I think that's going all the way up to high C there. Just right at the highest point. This oboe part is just going to be nasty on its own because it's oboes in these runs of major seconds. That's mirrored in the upper clarinets, well, clarinets 2 and 3. And we've also got something similar in the E flat and solo clarinet. So this is just crunchy, crunchy scoring here. Even look at this English horn going well above the staff. He's just saying, give us all you got and just make this kind of nasty sounding. Percussion, basically triangle roll, bass drum, hit, cymbal, triangle roll. Nothing really special there. We've got our xylophone coming back, and I think I pointed that out. Let's go on to the next page. And again, we've got a lot more of this same texture. There's so much going on this page. Everything, though, is really in these small chunks. So first thing I notice right here at 25, we've got the boom chucks again. Boom, We've got these scalar runs, the crunchy scalar runs. And so if we start looking in the horns, and it's just kind of like cell after cell after cell, all being put together to really just build up a texture is all he's really doing here. Notice down here in the flugels that and just really hammering home these upbeats. The most important part here, though, I want to look at the orchestral brass. That's the trumpets, cornets, horns, and trombones, but only the upper two trombones. Note he has changed the time signature only for those 4 lines to 9/8. So this tells us that the rhythmic complexity here is really, really intense. But he's written it 9/8, and it's almost like it's in for ba 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 ba. This is going to cut through the ensemble like a knife because this is all in unison. Let's double check. D, 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 D. Yeah, it's all these unison or octaves. And against just this trill and whirl. And this is, just right in this perfect register for that on all these instruments. High up in the trombone, fairly high up in the trumpets, and the horns right in the center. And the xylophone here. And again, if you remember back to the earlier videos, you got the stems down, stems up. That's early form of sticking, which players will probably just ignore. Okay, let's get all the way to rehearsal 26. And this is just this big cascade down. So it's just going from high to low, starting with the piccolos, and you can see it going all the way down here, way down. It's the lowest note here in the sousaphone. You can really just exemplify that in just these upper 6 staves. Same thing here in the clarinets. He really wants for that low C, concert C here in the low clarinets, but the instruments of the time just did not have it. And just rolls with triangle, tam-tam, cymbals, bass drum, just this massive crescendo, glissando in the xylophone, all these cascades going to this long fermata right before 26. And the only thing that holds through is a C natural in all the low voices. So really, really fascinating scoring here. But again, it's kind of expected. He puts the instruments, it's essentially just like 2 lines. So you got the cascading downward scale, and then this part here, the brass, dum, bop, bop, bop. And I'm sure I messed the rhythm up there. But these are the only 2 lines, and he basically, the woodwinds take over the cascade, and the brass take over this. And there's not a lot of orchestrational choices that he has to make. He just puts it, when the instrument has that in range, they play it. Notice here how some of the instruments in the sax horns are treated like the orchestral brass, like the flugel horns, or that the alto horns, euphoniums, and tubas are treated more like the woodwinds. So a little bit difference there. But our tubas and euphoniums go on. And very lent, move, I'm not even trying the French, tempo of the beginning is what it says. Dum, dun, dee, dum, dum, dum. And we've got our wedge motif that has come back. Da, 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 dum. Between the bassoons and the bari saxes. I love being able to say bari saxes because how many pieces do you know that have 2 bari saxes? That's awesome. So we got the dialogue between the tubas, which is just this kind of warm wash. There's no real articulation to it. To as articulated as you get da 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 in the bassoons and bari saxes. All right, and then we keep going with that texture. The tubas keep going, and then we hand it off to the tenor saxes, and then to the alto saxes, and our cascade up. Dun 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 dun. Bum, ba, 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 bum. And so we've got basically an orchestrational crescendo here, as well as not just a crescendo, but a arpeggio going up. So we start off in the lower voices. So we see sousaphone, bass clarinet, contrabass clarinet going all the way up into piccolo. These triplets will come back in the end and become really, really important. So keep an eye out for when we have triplets. We don't have them often, but this will become a really important thing. And again, we can see pretty much everything going on right down here in the sax horns. But we have a very, very dramatic tonal shift here at our retenez. Forgive me, I don't pronounce the French. But the most unusual sound that we're going to hear. So we've got all of our muted orchestral brass is muted, and let's see, are we all basically holding? Yeah, we're all holding D's. So we've got this held D, but coming in right here is the celeste, and just this lovely arpeggio that's mirrored by the oboes and bassoons and English horn in there as well. Actually, it's just oboe, English horn, and 2 bassoons. The second oboe has English horn cues. This piece is heavily cued because it is such a large ensemble. But those instruments, where they come in with the celeste, very nicely, ba-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-dum, bum, take over a melodic figure, and the celeste just has one more chord after that, and it's just really lovely. And the celeste does not play much in this piece, but those 2 chords right there are really quite nice. To our double reed melody, we do get a counter melody here in muted trumpet and horn. And it's just basically a call and response. So oboe, English horn, bassoon being mirrored by muted trumpet and horn. Anything going on? Nope, not a thing going on in the sax horns. Now, I'd like to point out something interesting here. The only instrument here that's really going to hold through this fermata is our Contra bass clarinet. Very, very unusual for him to just leave it to the contrabass clarinet. It is cued down here in the tuba, and it's not even played in the double bass. I will say he also has it in a role in the timpani, but the contrabass clarinet will be 1 octave lower. So, highly, highly unusual for the time. Remember, this was written in 1913. Contrabass clarinet was just an oddity. There were very few instruments out there. The Guard Republican, we're pretty sure, had one. And I can almost tell you exactly what kind of instrument it was. It was a Besson-Fontaine instrument. It was about all that was available. But we get into this really fun section here at 28. One of my favorite sections, actually. And we start off with the sousaphone solo. Brap, 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 brap. And the sarrusophone is accompanied by just a pizzicato in the bass. Boom, boom, boom. But you're really focusing on that sarrusophone. And, of course, nobody performs it with a sarrusophone because nobody has sarrusophones. Fun fact, this is for a C sarrusophone. There are a grand total of 6 C sarrusophones in the world that we can track down. So that's one reason this part's almost always going to be played on a contrabassoon. That's one of those places in this piece where it really should be acceptable to switch out instruments. Not with the sax horns, though. Okay, so we've got the sarrusophone. Brum, 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 brum. And we've got this kind of march here, and we get sarrusophone, bassoon, sarrusophone, bassoon. Against that, let's look at our percussion, because the percussion's doing something interesting. On our downbeats, we've got bass drum and snare drum. And the snare drum's just going brap, brap. The bass drum's just boom, boom. Coupled to the bassoons, it's the tambourine. Boom, boom, boom. Really, really cool effect. Interestingly, I want you to look at how he has these Q notes here. If you don't have a sarrusophone or bassoons, instead of having the grace notes, he has 2 players playing seconds. So and this is very, very weird scoring. It's like he expected the euphonium and tuba players not to be able to play grace notes, which they obviously can. Just it's a little bit conservative. And so our boom chucks continue, but here comes one of my favorite orchestrational devices. So on the downbeats, we've had bassoon, or sarrusophone, bassoon, sarrusophone, bassoon, sarrusophone, bassoon. Now he brings in ba ba boom ba ba ba, and the upbeats are all in the 2 bari saxes, and they hand off bari 1, bari 2, bari 1, bari 2, bra 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 bra, and really, really cool. And that's mirrored. The bari saxes are doubled entirely by the castanets. So we've got this bass drum, snare drum on 1, tambourine on 2. On all our upbeats, we've got castanets. Boom, click, beep. So, boom, click, click, boom, click, boom, click, boom, click, boom. Yeah, so we've got this. And all the while, everything here feels like it's in 2, but it's really in 3. Then we've got our soli in the tenor saxes. Bum, 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 bum. And just how often do you get this kind of tenor sax feature? And that's answered by the cornets. And then against that, I want you to pay real close attention to what the clarinets are doing here. We have 5 solo clarinets, or 2 solo clarinet parts, and then 3 solo clarinets from first clarinet. And then we also have the bass clarinet. So we've got 6 solo clarinets here. Really, this kind of motif will come back a lot. And then the tenor sax comes back. And then the alto sax comes in with it. The second clarinets come in and help out the tenor sax. Anything going on in the sax horns? Yes, the baritone helps as the baritone playing along exactly with the tenor sax. So we've got baritone horn and tenor sax. It's going to be a very unusual pairing, but one that will work quite well. And then as the phrase goes up and up and up, we add in the rest of the clarinet section and are punctuated on this last note by all the upper winds and the upper saxes. And let's take a look. So, do you remember just a couple pages ago, dee da 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 da. Now we've got that reverse, dee da 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 da. And to that, we've got punctuated on our upbeats the 4 trombones. Bop, bop, bop. And here at 29, we now have the kind of a repeat of the section we just had. And it's just a little faster now. We've got some of the same kind of elements. So we've got the boom chucks between the bassoons, saxophones on the downbeats, the bari saxes on the upbeats, and then the upper saxes playing their melody again. Call and response, we've got E-flat clarinets as well as trumpets and cornets. So every time he repeats a section like this, he always makes it a little bit more intense the second time. A little bit louder instruments, a little bit higher tessitura. This is a really good compositional technique. And we just keep going. We've got these held notes up here in the upper saxes that's also doubled here in the flutes. That was not there before. And then we've also got the same thing here in our 6 solo clarinets. All very similar to the passage we had before, but now we've sped it up a little bit. We've put a little bit more intensity to it, and let's see where he goes. I think we're going to keep getting more intense. Yep, and so very, very similar to the page before. So, on the page before, we had that one measure interlude. Now we've expanded that to 2 measures. And it's within the whole of the sax horn section, and all of our punch notes are within the whole of the orchestral brass, with the exception of the horns, which just help out in the middle section. We've got this hairpin thing where it goes up, and I think I messed up the articulation there, but I think you know what I mean. This kind of punctuation between the orchestral brass and the sax horns is something that is going to get lost in a transcription. And it breaks my heart when people perform this piece in not the original format, because this kind of thing, particularly if the true seating arrangements are preserved, is not only a great orchestrational device, it's a great sonic device in that you're going to hear these sounds coming from different parts of the ensemble. And guess what? Here we are back to the same thing. So we've got our boom chucks between the bassoon, saxophone, bari sax. Bop, 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 bop. Everything now, though, is getting shorter. It's getting more compressed. So whereas it would take 4 measures to do this, we've now got 2. You can see here that the percussion is just condensed. Now, here at 30, we introduce a new element. And that new element is starting here in the baritone horns and in the snare drum. Very almost military-like rhythm, and it's just very insistent. Again, boom chucks, and then here in the saxes, what was nearly a 2-bar phrase is now a 2-beat phrase. It's handed off between tenor and alto. Everything's getting compressed, it's getting more urgent, and we're seeing more tessituras, more piquant instruments. And all this stuff just keeps, So our cell has gone from about 4 or 5 beats down to a 2-beat cell. And if you don't know what I mean by a cell, basically, this kind of phrase right here, da 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 da, is a cell. Ba da da ba. And he's really just composing with that very, very minimal idea. But the important thing to look at down here is in the sax horns, or some semblance thereof. And just this, it's this insistent rhythm that we have not had before, just kind of driving and really putting a cohesion to all these cells that are in the woodwinds and in the brass. And we can see in the percussion. So we've got here the snare drum that hands off to the tambourine and the castanets, back to the snare drum, back to the tambourine and the castanets. So just this really kind of insistent thing, and with the cohesion of the sax horn group, it's just putting this foundation on everything. Let's go on to the next page. And we continue that same thing into 31. All right, at 31. We still got a lot more to go, don't we? Tell you what, we will do another episode where we do 31 to the end. And I will have that out hopefully by Friday, because this video has gone a lot longer than I expected it to. So 31 to the end, before the end of the week. So stay with me and we'll finish this sucker out. So yes, we are finally finishing Dionysiaques, and there, check out the video that I uploaded directly before this for some really, really cool information, and we'll talk to you later.